U.S. Bank Voyager. Fuel, maintenance, and more. Managing fleet expenses and payments can be a major challenge, especially without the right solutions. The U.S. Bank Voyager Fleet Program offers businesses a single source solution to help manage and control fleet fuel and maintenance costs.
Well, I'm excited to be here with Ramel Lindsay. He's Vice President Sales Leader for U.S. Bank Voyager. Ramel, welcome to this edition of Fleet Momentum video series.
Thanks, Chris, and appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about turning payment data into executive insight. I'm just going to jump right into the first question. So, fleet teams have more transaction and payment data than ever, data overload, right? Yet many
hmm
fleets, they still feel like they're operating in the dark. But where do fleets lose the most time and money trying to turn raw transactions into decisions?
Well, you brought up something there, Chris. You said data overload. We come across fleets who have tens to hundreds of thousands of transactions. So it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Um, so that cost is showing up in those wasted hours, right? Going through all that data and not really being able to get to where you need to, and that is, actionable insights. Instead, you're just trying to kind of defend numbers rather than improving operations. We're able to provide them, with some information, data analytics specifically, where you can transform that raw data into graphical insights that could be acted upon at all levels, including the executive level. So we feel like that really gives them an opportunity to understand their business better and therefore really maximize, their operational costs where they can reduce those costs and then also provide the executive level insights that they need in order to kind of ladder up this information within their organization without spending hours upon hours, once again, just sifting through maybe tens to hundreds of thousands of raw transactional data.
Sure. I mean, I kind of want to follow up on that actionable insight because we've been hearing that forever, right? But I mean, what does that really mean in practice? I mean, from a fleet payments program provider, how are you helping them, do this faster or better every week?
Sure. So we really partner with them, standing shoulder to shoulder, side by side with them to help them understand that data. A relationship manager, account managers, account coordinators, they're all going to assist them and understand that data. So we have the ability to provide them with APIs so they can pull real time information into their system where they can use their own platform, for example, to do the reporting, or they can use our data analytics platform, which provides the graphical insights. So that then allows them to be more actionable once again versus reactionary. They can then understand, at a high level, for example, all of our transactions are occurring in this region, or perhaps we have transactions occurring in a state where we don't even fuel. And so, therefore, that's probably a likely indicator of fraud or misuse and abuse. And so that leads to the action of being able to shut down those cards. And better yet, with our APIs, they can tie that into their ERP system and their HR system. So if they do suspect misuse and abuse, for example, transactions occurring in Florida that should not have, they may terminate that driver and systemically then through the API, that card then is shut down, that driver is shut down, and they can reissue a new card. So once again, very actionable insights that Voyager provides from a partnership perspective.
Okay, yeah, and so fleet managers, I mean, they live in an ecosystem of management, right? And so they're often going to need to translate that spend into a story that leadership can trust. So, what makes fleet payment data truly usable at the executive level, but without losing the operational detail that fleets actually need?
hmm When I addressed this a little bit earlier with the graphical kind of interface that the Voyager data analytics provides, that really gives you, various tiles, if you will, where you can focus on different merchants. So you may want to focus on a particular merchant, for example, that might have higher fuel prices, or vice versa, another merchant who offers discounts and offers lower fuel prices. And that then provides savings, which then that fleet manager can ladder up to the executive level team and say, hey, we've identified these particular cost savings, either through discounts, through lower cost pricing, or eliminating some of those higher price fueling locations from their network. And all of that can be done very simply because of the data analytics platform versus, I mentioned before, sifting through tens to hundreds of thousands of rows of data and then trying to figure out, where you're going to fuel or not fuel based on all of that data is extremely difficult, if not impossible, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of fleets don't even catch on to the fact that they might be getting some fees and some other things assessed on that card that we are able to identify and help them then eliminate when they switch over to the Voyager card.
Okay, great. So staying with management and senior leadership, they tend to ask the same questions about
Hmm.
fleet spend, right? And they really need the answers. They want the answers that they can stand behind. But what are the most common questions you hear, and what does it take so that to allow them to answer with confidence?
Yeah, I think these are perfect segue kind of to what I just spoke to. Where are they leaking spend? Once again, kind of getting back to misuse and abuse. Or where are they fueling? Are they fueling with premium fuel, for example, even instead of, regular grade fuel? Or if they're getting mid grade, even, which is higher price than regular grade fuel. Are they fueling up perhaps other vehicles? Once again, getting back to misuse and abuse. So they want to know where that spend is leaking and whether or not it's legitimate spend. And then also what's changed, right? So how can we then effectively help them change those behaviors where they go to the low cost fuel providers, where we can also help them with telematics and linking into telematics devices through APIs where we know, for example, based off of our mobile app, they pull up to a location. We know then that the vehicle's there through telematics with the GPS within telematics. We know that the mobile app is there because of the GPS within the telematics. So we then know both vehicle and effectively the card is going to be used at location. And better yet, we know the tank level. So the tank level might be 50%. They should therefore not fuel more than 50%. If they do, that's probably a good indicator that they have misuse and abuse or filling up other vehicles. So that kind of gives you some examples of some of the things that executives are concerned about, where they're leaking spend, and then how do we change that behavior from a Voyager perspective, where we can provide them with some insights with our APIs and tying into telematics devices. And then the controls that are available through Voyager, where they can lock in where they fuel that particular merchant that has the discounts that they want, that has the low cost pricing that they want. That's alongside the route that they want. They only want to fuel 3 times a day, no more than that. They may not fuel on Sundays, for example, things like that, where we can really hone in on their behavior and then make sure that we provide those guardrails versus preventing them from fueling when they actually need to. We can help them fuel in a much better fashion.
Yeah, great. Well, okay, last question. I mean, less is more, right? Or doing more with less, I guess. So, fleet managers are asked to deliver more insight with fewer resources. Tell me about how those expectations are changing and, what fleets are demanding from payment programs to really save time, reduce costs, and manage risk.
Yeah, and you really kind of spoke to that, where they're being asked, right, to deliver more strategic insights, and this kind of gets back into, once again, tons of data that they've got to sift through, but yet we can provide them with actionable insights through the Voyager data analytics tool, graphical representations of the data, where it's very easy to discern where they're fueling, where they shouldn't be fueling, and even getting into, carbon footprint reporting, for
Right.
example. So those are the types of things that I think those executives and fleet managers and leaders are looking at. And they want to be able to reduce, the cost while also managing the risk. So we're able then to provide them with those additional controls that a bank provides, right? We have that bank grade rigor and transparency and also that hands-on fleet expertise. Once again, we're going to work with them side by side in order to help them set up these controls where it doesn't prevent them to fuel when they need to,
Yeah.
but yet prevents that misuse and abuse and potential fraud.
Yeah. Great. Well, Ramel, it was great talking about how to turn payment data into executive insight. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Fleet Momentum.
Really appreciate it again. Thanks, Chris.